ecosystems where people said, oh, let's just bring this species in to eat this species, right? And you end up not realizing there's nothing else to take care of that, right? One of the things about, I think one of the things about innovation that's so interesting is that the person who innovates, it's a question of sort of who's collecting rents from that innovation and what externalities does that innovation create. So my knowledge with respect to resilience innovation is limited primarily to financial markets. And so if you think of these derivatives as an innovation, there's a sense in which the people engaging these activities, they were making fairly solid rents, right? And the downside of that is they're creating risk that's spread out through the entire system, right? Making the entire system less robust. And so if you look at, John Giannakopoulos has a wonderful paper, if you look at just sort of these leverage ratios and what they were going up, right, you could see individuals were making money and the system was becoming less resilient. So I think one of the things you can think about with respect to innovation is when we think about some introduction of an innovation into a transportation system, right, into sort of the mobility infrastructure, we have to ask, what are the externalities that thing's creating? Because it may be that this thing turns a huge profit, right? But even if it turns a huge profit, it could be making the entire system less resilient. But yeah, so do we have to go through all 576? Maybe not, but I think this is where having lots of, there's an adage from computer science which is, with enough eyeballs, all bugs are shallow, right? And I think that same sort of thing is true. Like when you think about, sort of approving some sort of change, you want a lot of eyeballs there to recognize if there's some sort of bug.
I'm trying to think about the language we use to explain this really succinctly to policymakers who are making the transportation reauthorization bill.
Right.
How many variations?
Well, I don't think you need to make all five. I think that actually just saying this sort of, of what, to what, from what, through what, right, sort of thing, right, in terms of just saying, when we think about think about all the sort of functional attributes, all the things in which transportation system, all the dimensions upon which a transportation system can flourish, right, in terms of giving people access, making the economy efficient, making, given the party that's currently in power, making the case that you can create a more equitable, fair, opportunistic society, right, and that you can create a sustainable world, right? If you think of these just sort of four core properties of a flourishing transportation system or mobility system, then you want to ask, I think you just want to say, how do we maintain that given that we know that is in a static world, right? And I think maybe you tie it to the financial system and say, look, we're no longer in a world. You have to maybe, wear black swan T-shirts or something, but we're no longer in a world where we just think about let's squeeze this to get more efficiency. We have to think in terms of the dynamics of the system, the time series of that system, and we want to make sure we have a system that on all these metrics that we have about what makes this transportation system flourish, that we're not building in the possibility of things like a phase transition, self-organized criticality, a massive breakdown, right? And how do we do that? Well, our best intuitions are that we need these particular properties, right? We need more modularity, we need more diversity, right? We need more adaptability. We need more information systems to anticipate potential problems, right? But I think, unfortunately, I don't think it's one of the issues with and complexity has the same thing. One of the issues with both complexity and resilience is they don't lend themselves to simple sound bites.
I'm Robin Chase. I love the talk.
Thank you.
I'm struck when you talk about modularity is that I feel like modularity is almost the opposite of diversity.
Right.
So it's just striking to me. I keep thinking, well, how does the modularity, I understand how you can swap things out and replace, but now you've also got a codified, rigid thing that isn't diverse.
Right. No, well, the thing is, but you can, so one of the things when you think about, if you go back to the graph of the well-functioning ecosystem, right, there's a sense in which there's firm boundaries between each of the species. Or if you look at like the human body, right, we've got modular organ systems, right, but then those organs are diverse, they each play specific roles. But but we don't have as much redundancy. Like if our heart fails, we don't have a back, the spleen can't suddenly become the heart, right? But in an ecosystem, right, if you wipe out one species, something else at its trophic level can sort of move into the geographic space or even the food space, the trophic space that the other one's in. So there's a sense in which, and again, I think the thinking here is there's a lot of contradictions in thought in these systems that are this complex. But I think one of the things that we think about in this stuff I probably know best here is my wife's work on constructing robust systems of government, is what you want is you want these sort of modular things like the court system. But then you want, when you think about keeping the politicians in check, that modular entity, there's other entities, such as the people, such as the press, that also have these sort of boundaries around them, right, that are all performing related tasks that have different filters on the information, right, so they're diverse, that makes the system more robust. But you're right. I mean, I think the thing is there is a subtle contradiction there in terms of when you think about modularizing something and drawing a boundary around it, right, you are limiting the amount of diversity you can get, right? It's interesting, I mean, if you take, I was thinking of the case when you were talking about the zip cars, that's a classic example of an innovation that does the opposite of the derivative trading in a way, right? Because it creates these positive externalities in terms of opening up parking spaces and stuff like that. So when we look at, but I think one of the things when you think about like an entrepreneur coming forward with an idea like zip cars, I think you see the presentation of those things because you're pitching it in terms of the positive externalities. And what's nice is having the multiple eyeballs to think about what are all the system level effects, right? They're created by something. And this is also why one of the things that when you think about, and this is where I think diversity, there's also one of the principles that I didn't maybe talk enough about it with the multiple routes, is that there's a lot of notion of sort of doing experimentation, right, at the city level. And so one of the things to do is if something sounds good, try it, right, and then get a better understanding of how things play out, because we never really have a full understanding of how they're going to work, partly because it's hard to figure out what these strange people are going to do, right, once given something.
My name is John Coleman. I'm with Ford Motor Company. Realizing that you said this is very hard to reduce to sound bites, I have a couple of sentences here I'd like your thought on comparing resilience and efficiency.
Okay.
And posing it as much as a collective action problem as anything.
Okay.
That resilience is based on the assumption we should prepare for what we do not know.
Okay.
But efficiency is based on the assumption that individuals should only prepare for what individuals know. Does that resonate with you?
Yeah, no, that's right. Yeah, the first one especially. The second one, it's hard. The second one, I might take a little issue with in the sense that because we can think about collective efficiency, right, as separate from individual. So when you think about things like free markets, we tend to have this sort of Adam Smith-like version that if individuals pursue what they want to pursue, we're going to get the collective outcome is going to be efficient, right? But that doesn't work, as you mentioned, in collective action problems, right? So there is a sense in which we can think of resilience like a collective action problem. But yeah, no, I think both are very, very close. Yeah, I really like the first one a lot.
He's a poet.
Here we.
Let's give Scott a round.
All right, thanks.